This is going to be an interesting fight because this has real stipulations and real stakes. But this is a 1 foot in, 1 foot out type fight for T City, at least is from what it sounds like on the interviews, right? He says, hey, I was already trying to move up to lightweight. I guess this will be my last fight at featherweight, which doesn't really make sense to me. Like, what does this do for you then at this point? What does a win against Diego Lopes do if you already have fights you're eyeing for 155 pounds? But again, this could be the storybook matchup that we need for Diego Lopes to really ascend to be a true contender right here, to break into the top 5. Stylistically, man, you finally got two real legitimate jiu-jitsu guys right here, two dudes who are nonstop attack and all that. But when it comes down to the striking, that's the battle, and that's the story I'm a little bit more curious to know who you think has an upper hand. T-City's had some sick boxing in the past. We've seen it before, especially once he's gotten a little bit more serious about his training, wasn't training out the garage anymore. But Diego Lopes, he's got bricks in his hands. For whatever reason, when he hits you, it's not good. So who has the upper hand over here as an overall MMA package? Because some would say it's Lopes, but I think the hardcore is no. Brian Ortega is no slouch.
Absolutely, Derek. Brian Ortega's no slouch, and I don't want this comment to take away anything from T-City, but I do think Lopes has the advantage in the striking. I should say in the striking defense, right? I genuinely think this is a Lopes fighting an older version of himself, or vice versa, an Ortega fighting a younger version of himself. Arguably, Lopes has the speed. He has some bombs in his hands, but we know Brian Ortega is also down to game, right? He's down to fight. He's down to sit in there, but bloody you up, and he can. He has the skills to get it done. The only problem I see with Brian Ortega is he is very hittable, right? We've seen him lumped up before. We've seen him going, and it leans on a little bit of that pride that he has, that he is down to step in the pocket, sit there, swing and bang, but not necessarily always get his hands up to block the punches that are coming back or dip the head out of the way. Brian Ortega in the defense has some lacking ability or some faulty abilities in there, and that's why I think that Lopes has the advantage.
It almost seems like he needs to get hit a couple times to wake up, though. You know what I mean? And after he survives the storm, he's like, all right, I'm ready to go, and I'm willing to drag you to depths that you're not willing to go yourself. And that's where we have yet to see somebody take Diego Lopes there, because the man is nonstop offense, right? Submission attacks at all times, swings big, sometimes lands big, other times does not. But was it concerning at all to you to take this big of a step of this large of a step up in competition after decisioning Dan Ige on 3 hours notice? You know what I mean? Like, that was a real concerning for a lot of people.
Absolutely, Derek. I mean, especially when you phrase it like that, you look at it on paper, right? If you're like, oh, he fought Dan Ige, took him to decision, that's a hell of a card. Like, that's a hell of a fight. Like, Dan Ige is a killer. 3 hours, didn't really have prep time. Like, there's a whole thing going. Yeah, nah, it definitely raises some eyebrows on how actually dangerous Diego Lopes is.
Be fair, man. Diego Lopes had 3 hours notice too, right? He had to weigh in 3 times. We probably saw a depleted version of what Diego Lopes truly is. But I just think when you're looking at Brian Ortega and you're looking at the losses, right? 3 losses: Yair Rodriguez, Alexander Volkanovski, Max Holloway. He avenged the Rodriguez loss in a dominant fashion, the way that it actually ended up. So no harm, no foul right there. But you look at the other ones, man. Volk and the Blessed Express, Max Holloway, man, you can't be mad at that, and you can't sit here and talk down on T-City, but it's just a matter of youth versus experience in this one, man, and I'm more interested to see, do we even see jiu-jitsu in this one, or do we see just a straight kickboxing match?
I think we're going straight kickboxing match, Derek. We're over here, playground rules, you already know how it goes. I don't think we're seeing any jiu-jitsu.
Am I wrong to think, hold on, let me solo myself out to make it more dramatic. Am I wrong, folks, to think Diego Lopes submits Brian Ortega, T-City, the Triangle Master right here? Am I wrong, AJ?
Ooh, are you wrong, Derek? That's a bold claim. I'll say at least that. I'm not willing to say you're wrong, because Diego Lopes has the ability in him, the youth, the vigor, the strength, the technique as well. I don't want to discredit Brian Ortega on that aspect, though, man.
Yeah, man. From jiu-jitsu, how would you say, intellectual as myself, I'm just kidding, man. For a guy who knows a little bit of jiu-jitsu to some real guys who know some jiu-jitsu right here, I think it's possible, man. And I think that one of them might be willing to test the black belt out on the other. I'm just saying, something to think about. But let's get to the actual money here and then keep it pushing, man. The opening odds had Ortega plus money, plus 120, minus 150 comeback for Diego Lopes, which is pretty impressive if you look at it. Right now, it is swollen minus 185 for Lopes, plus 155 for T-City, man. So at the end of the day, minus 185 for Diego Lopes is a price that actually, AJ, I'm not willing to pay. Not willing to pay that from a pure money line perspective. I am interested to see how I can cash in some value on a couple of other plays right here. So before I talk about the props, what are your thoughts on that price? Is that a price that you are willing to pay? Because this is a consensus pick.
This is a consensus pick, Derek. I was literally, when I was thinking about it, my cap was 200, right? Minus
Mhm.
200 for Diego Lopes. Not a chance in the world I'm going at it. Minus 180. Man, you're right there. You make some eyebrows raise. I can see if it wasn't against Brian Ortega, I would take that cash. But right now, not really.
I mean, listen, man, if there's a juicy prop for us to hit, excluding my like dart throw for the plus 550 submission prop that you folks are going to be thanking me about later if it hits, we're talking about plus 200 decision for Diego Lopes as potentially the play. And the only reason this play hits is because if I'm not mistaken, yeah, if I'm not mistaken, I am not mistaken. It's a 3-round fight right here. I just think that Lopes is going to be stronger in the first round. And I think that if Ortega doesn't wake up quick, man, and this fight goes to a decision, I just think that Lopes is going to do more in that first round and potentially in that third round to kind of squeak things out. He's always on the offensive, always throwing up submissions and nonstop throwing haymakers. So Ortega's either going to have to catch him or mitigate that offense. And that's my play right there. What do you think?
I like it, Derek. I like it. I'm curious. I was thinking right now, right, with 4 knockouts in Diego Lopes's last 6 wins. Are we putting any thought on that plus 325 TKO? The only way I see it happening personally is just damage upon damage upon damage, and the ref finally steps in to stop what's going on. I don't think we're seeing a clean, just straight up knockout right out of the Lopes camp. But do you put any investment in that plus 325?
Yeah, you're kind of. Are you thinking a little bit more towards like the Sadiq Yusuf style, right? Where you just catch him with something and just lay it on. Yeah, it could happen. Ortega's super hittable, right? But then again, jiu-jitsu guys have a really good ability to be able to shell up and use their guard to avoid some of that damage. I'm not saying that in a street fight type situation. I'm just talking about clinch you up. Let me stop getting cracked in the back of my head or something like that, right? So plus 325 TKO prop for Diego Lopes is something to look at. Plus 625 TKO prop for Brian Ortega is something to look at right here, man. But that's talking long shots here. And if I'm talking about putting my name on this one, I'm rolling with that plus 200 Diego Lopes play right here. Otherwise, I stay away from this one entirely. I think it's going to be a fun fight, but that is the consensus pick, Diego Lopes right there, AJ.